Hi everyone, getting flued out here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the brand new James Blake record, Assume Form. This is the fourth full-length album from UK-based singer, songwriter, producer, Mr. James Blake, who we haven't heard from in a while, at least in studio album form, as he has been doing quite a bit of songwriting and production behind the scenes for projects like Beyoncé's Lemonade and the Black Panther soundtrack. When Blake originally exploded onto the music scene off of a wave of pitchfork hype, he had a style and a skill set that set him apart from every other electronic music producer and singer-songwriter of his time. He seemed equally talented at rolling out these elegant, heartfelt piano ballads, as well as futuristic electronic odysseys fusing together elements of UK bass and future garage and dubstep. And when these two streams crossed into cohesive and compelling songs, it created quite a unique sound for Blake. Now, James' first two studio records kicked off his discography really well, but he still very much sounded like an artist who couldn't quite settle on a single idea or sound or direction, a guy who maybe just refused to be pigeonholed. Not the biggest deal in the world, as it wasn't hurting the overall enjoyability of his albums up until that point. I do think Blake's inability to focus and settle on a stable sound did hurt the likability of his third album that dropped in 2016, though. The fragmented ballads and the dodgy recordings, as well as the half-baked production on this album, really did leave me feeling mostly indifferent to the whole thing. And given just how inconsistent the material on this thing is, an hour and 15 minutes is just way too long of a runtime. So I essentially came into this next record hoping James would come through with a more concrete vision. And while on Assume Form, he still can't quite get away from this temptation of being a jack of all trades, the guy who can do and incorporate whatever. He does deliver some of his best tunes yet in this track list. I do think the record does kick off with kind of a rough start, though. The title track, Assume Form, really does anything but assume form. It's a fragmented mess of meandering vocal melodies, all of these ambient piano phrases that remind me of the incidental music Brian Eno made for Windows 95, and the lyrics see James going off on an emotional diatribe that's less than gripping. The transitions the song features from one section to the next are less than fulfilling, nor do they really build up enough tension to really make any of the changes on this track gratifying. I'm similarly underwhelmed by the following track, Mile High, featuring Travis Scott and Metro Boomin. Essentially, it's just a very bland and spacey trap cut with very average input from Metro and Travis. Percussion's pretty basic, Travis's auto-tuned rapping is pretty basic. Really the most standout element of the entire track, and it's almost wallpaper, are the ambient synth textures swallowing the instrumental. Then James drops in on the second half with kind of this slow, melodic, kind of rapped verse. He's like slow-mo rapping. I appreciate the attempt, but I wasn't really all that crazy about it. Thankfully, the quality of Assume Form just goes up from there. As far as collaborations go on this record, teaming up with Moses Sumney on the next cut is much more appropriate than Travis Scott, in my opinion. Not to say James shouldn't be crossing over into other genres if he wants to, but I don't know, Sumney's vocals just complement James's style so much better. Also, Metro Boomin's trap rhythms on this track are much busier and I think more intricate, unique. Whereas on Mile High, it's like everybody's just kind of phoning it in. I also think James' passionate croons on this cut contrast really well with Sumney's very expressive and kind of mystical singing. I also love the instrumental's deep bass and desert string melodies. And after this cut is when James essentially lets open the ballad floodgates, which is when he truly shines. The track Into the Red kicks off with these beautiful, gorgeous, moody, string-backed vocals. It's got a great relaxing beat. It's a fantastic mix of electronic and acoustic instrumentation, but the stunner of the song is James' hypnotic refrain, "She was the gold rush, she was the gold rush," essentially likening this love that he's found to discovering endless riches. I also love the dreamy and kaleidoscopic Can't Believe the Way We Flow. James on this track sounds like he is floating on air. He is literally high on love on this track. The squeaky, shimmery vocal samples are quite nice, the cloudy, pillowy mix, the lead vocal melody, "Can't believe the way we flow." And even though I do usually enjoy Blake's abstract approach to writing songs, there are some tunes here where he's actually pretty forthright with his ideas and emotions. The song I'll Come To is like a welcoming, loving lullaby with its orchestral strings and nocturnal background vocals. The electronic beats and the haunting melodies create a very gentle atmosphere, which gives me the sensation of being rocked like a baby. Meanwhile, the lyrics on the song Power On follow a surprisingly simplistic formula for Blake. You can see them right here, essentially his preconceived misconceptions about love or this relationship that he's in being smashed repeatedly. You can just tell on this record, on so many tracks, James is right now, at least to the point of making this record, just smack dab in the middle of like this honeymoon phase of this love that he's in. And he is just packing it into his music. There are some kind of enjoyable dark patches on this record though, like the song Are You in Love, which lyrically read to me as like somebody who's faking their way through a relationship, or at least James being in a position where he's looking for some kind of assurance from the other person, waiting for that other person to confirm to him that does she love him as much as he loves her. It seems like a budding relationship, and yet he's at a point where he's just ready to devote himself to it completely. I do love the tune, the vocals, the lyrics, the instrumentation, the layering is beautiful. The one thing I'm not too crazy about on it is the super dry, simple clap hi-hat pattern that just sticks out like a sore thumb in the most unpleasant way. Don't Miss It is a depressive little ballad that James dropped months before this album that still sounds good in the track list, featuring these heavily manipulated vocals, these watery piano chords. It features a nice linear progression, the instrumentation builds beautifully, the lyrics detail the stressors of a busy and restless mind, with James coming off almost as if he's disconnected from himself in some way. Meanwhile, the song Where's the Catch is a very dark, shadowy, and negative piece of art pop with a fantastic verse from Andre, one that he describes as petty before he goes right into it. And even though it is a very grim moment on the record, I do think this album needed something like that to balance out the more euphoric bits. And to go off of this track into another collaboration on this record, the cut featuring the one and only Rosalia. Oh my god, it's amazing. Oh, Jesus! I knew she was going to be on this record, was looking forward to hearing the feature, and it just surpassed all expectations. Not only in how gorgeously James and Rosalia's vocals just intertwine on this song, but I'm also mega impressed with the nocturnal instrumental and the tune itself. Barefoot in the nut. Oh god, the song feels so just emotionally hung up and sexy. The closer on this record is not super strong in my opinion though, Lullaby for My Insomniac. It is pleasant on the ear, but not one of the more gripping and engaging tunes. It's got a lot of layers, it's got a lot of atmosphere, it has some nice vocal harmonies, it's got some ambiance to it, but you know, not a strong tune, not a strong direction, just feels a little bland in my opinion. Still though, I would say Assume Form is an incredibly good album from James Blake, really bouncing back from his last LP a few years ago. In a way, it is still kind of held back by some of the more awkward detours that he takes toward the beginning and end of this album, but this thing easily features some of the best writing and production he's given us since the earlier part of this decade. I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, James Blake, Assume Form, forever.